arraignment is certainly the highest profile corruption-related incident yet in the ongoing dramatic and intriguing corruption purge waged especially by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Noordin Haji. What does this mean for her and the judiciary? Let's put matters into perspective now with lawyers Charles Kanjama and Alutalala Mukhwana. Thank you both for making time for us. Tonight, I asked you earlier whether this effectively kills or is it over for her career. You're both saying no, you'll explain. It goes without saying, this is why I asked this, or let me ask you instead of making a statement. That the threshold for integrity for such an office is quite low, but one needs to maintain a higher level of integrity comparing to other offices and to the layman, perceived or otherwise. So what does this mean for Justice Mwilu? Again, I ask you, is this effectively over for her?
Sorry, did you say the integrity threshold is low?
Yes.
How about that?
That for an office like DCJ and other offices, yes, they need to maintain a higher, it's higher threshold of integrity, sorry. Okay. They cannot be like a layman or other officers in the country. Correct. And that is why I ask you, does this effectively kill her career? You're both saying no. I'll start with you.
Yes. Hussein, the first thing I would say is that you are right. The Constitution itself prescribes high moral character for judges. In other words, they should have the reputation that we normally say of Caesar's wife, to be above suspicion. Mm-hmm. That also means that it is incumbent upon the Director of Public Prosecution, whose powers derive from Article 157, to ensure that he has a much higher threshold of assurance about the charges that are being brought before those charges are brought. Does that mean that the charges have been brought after due process has been done by the Office of the DPP? We cannot say so at this moment because the case has not begun. Yeah. The plea has not been taken. We have not seen the evidence. It would be quite unfortunate to conclude that the mere act of charging a judge terminates their judicial career. Even though we expect a lot of the judge, there is possibility of abuse, of prosecutorial discretion, or even mistake. So I think it would be very important for Kenyans to allow the process to run its course.
Presumption of innocence. The
presumption of innocence.
Still the same for
and also to test whether indeed this prosecution is being brought fairly against the Deputy Chief Justice. And
meaning if she's willing, later on, if she's proved to be innocent, you think she can go back and do what she does?
I believe that the mere fact that charges have been brought does not even stop her
from going on
with her duties. And in fact, the Judicial Service Commission will have to meet, as it has happened before, and determine what is the best course of action. Should she take a break? Should she be allowed to proceed with her matters? And I believe that actually the appropriate approach is that the DPP should present sufficient information to the Judicial Service Commission so that they can at least take some decision in regard to what happens during the interim period. I also think that the trial, if it has to take place, must be done extremely quickly to avoid prejudicing the administration of justice.
Thank you, Hussein. First and foremost, I must confess that as a lawyer, this shook me to the core.
Why?
Because we must understand that the government has three arms. And in the arm of the judiciary, Honorable Philomena Mwilu is ranked second. Therefore, she's no ordinary person. And therefore, this arrest, even though it was done, and I'm grateful that it was done more humanely and dignifiedly, it is really shocking because the accusations that they are leveled against her are not those to be contemplated as having been committed by a judge. However, as my brother has said, these are allegations. We know in this country that a lot of prosecutions that happen, some are gotten right, others are gotten wrong. I really hope, just like my brother has said, that on this one, given the gravity and the possibility of the ramifications to the nation, that Noordin Haji has got it right, and that the evidence that is going to be laid before will be watertight.
Because if she's wrong, he's wrong, then what?
Devastating.
Why?
Because we do not live in a vacuum, Hussein. And you are not a stranger in Jerusalem. who does not know that the good Lord has arisen from death. Last year, we just concluded a very acrimonious election. And this lady was firm, was on the front line, and she delivered a decision which elicited a very harsh and unfortunate response from the head of state, the infamous "we shall revisit." So the public cannot be told that, look, it is from a vacuum, and therefore whatever has been done must be above reproach for the nation to say
this was actually,
this is right.
We can play that sound by the head of state last year. And also this was actually responded to by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Noordin Haji. Do we have that?
I informed the Chief Justice, David Maraga, of my decision to grant consent for the arrest and prosecution of the Deputy Chief Justice, Lady Justice Philomena Betamwilo, on criminal charges. This decision has not been taken lightly, but it is the right decision under the law.
I'll come to that later. First, this was actually him acknowledging the weight of the office.
Indeed.
Just like you did.
Indeed.
We spoke earlier, you saw him earlier in the story earlier with Sam Kituku, lawyer Steve Ogola, who actually thinks the Chief Justice maybe is actually posing that question, could he have handled this in a different manner? That as much as you say it was handled decently, there are some who think it wasn't handled in the best way because of that office and the weight it carries, that maybe he should have advised this to be handled by the JSC or in another manner and not this. Do you think so?
Yeah, there are many ways you can look at it. As I said, if you look at the executive arm and the judiciary arm, Honorable Philomena Mwilu is the equivalent of Honorable William Ruto, if you look at it that way. So he's not an ordinary person, he's not an ordinary office. Looking at the dignity of the office, yes, it will be possible or preferable that the Judicial Service Commission would have handled. But remember, the allegations here are outright criminal.
Criminal, yeah.
So when you come to the realization that the allegations are outright criminal, then you tend to be sympathetic with the action taken by the DPP to the extent that it was handled humanely, the lady was presented before court and promptly released because of the gravity of the charges facing her. But as we have said, these are mere allegations and they remain that until the conclusion of the matter.
As Kajama says, you also think she should just go on with her work?
Look, what is the law for? The presumption of innocence is a cardinal rule of
whether you're a judge or you're a layman, it doesn't matter.
Of course, morally you will say that because she's supposed to be above reproach, like the Caesar's wife, aspersions will be cast. And purely on that basis, the Judicial Service Commission may have to look at what best way to handle the situation pending the realization.
But you'd advise her to stay on?
Well, if you ask me, she ought to stay on.
Okay. Charles also spoke about that. Or you want to...
let me not be taken as making a judgment in the matter. I have not seen the evidence. I think it is the responsibility of the Judicial Service Commission to make a judgment in the matter, because you may find that some litigants start complaining about an appearance of justice not being done. I know there have been previous cases of such nature, I'll not mention any name, involving other judges in Kenya over the last 10 years. And there have been two approaches taken, and I think that's what Steve Ogola was alluding to. There have been those cases where the Judicial Service Commission gets involved before the criminal justice system. Because one of the grounds upon which a judge could be removed from office is gross misconduct. And that technically could cover matters arising in the course of duty or of a criminal nature arising outside the course of duty. So there have been cases where the JSC has first sat to decide whether to set up a tribunal before criminal cases have been started. And there have also been other cases where the DPP has gone straight to commence criminal proceedings because he has felt that the matters involved are not directly in the course or conduct of judicial duty. So it's not a clear-cut issue. In fact, we have to be delicate here, and I would advise the public not to jump to conclusions about this matter. It is still too early to make conclusions one way or the other. But I would encourage members of the public to give the presumption of innocence to the Deputy Chief Justice, and also to allow the DPP to present his case in an expeditious manner. Okay, and I wish some of these members of the public could heed the advice. Let's take a look at the opinion we're already having. This is what they are saying on Twitter. The hashtag again tonight is NEWSNIGHT. And you can text us, of course, using the SMS number 22422. Okay, this is Dr. Miguna, who says arresting a Supreme Court judge and the Deputy Chief Justice within the precincts of the court has never happened, even in Gestapo Germany. It is meant to intimidate, threaten, and frighten the judiciary into submission. It is something we must not accept. Okay. There's still more tweets. Yes, Zephania Obaga. It's not about the office of the DCJ, but the integrity of the holders of that office. So it's about the individual, that's what you're saying. Tobias Murunga, no one should be spared when it comes to fighting impunity. Again, talking about the individual here. Right, we also have Dennis Savatia, who says, are you sure this is not the revisitation that was promised? We don't know what to believe anymore. Okay, and then we have Isaac Mudusi, arresting DCJ indicates the beginning of the revisit process. Okay. This is what you're talking to, Alutalala. Now we can listen to what the Director of Public Prosecutions said when he was responding to this. Of course, saying this did not start now. Investigations are not touching, are not from 2017. It goes way back.
And that's why the riddle is.
Okay, so, all right, let's first listen to what he said today.
Independent institution, and we are not going or are not being directed by anyone or by any statements given out there. This decision was made independently of all other matters and factors that you might think that might have brought this about.
Charles, do you think the public can isolate this and say this is just one apple in the basket from what is being said about the revisiting thing?
I don't think it's possible to isolate. In fact, it would be impractical to do so. Always the context in which prosecutions are done is very important. And I think there are a number of critical factors. I can say very quickly. Number one, under our constitution, the only person who has criminal immunity from criminal prosecution during their tenure in office is the President of the Republic. And even then, it doesn't extend to international crimes. We did see our president actually facing trial at the International Criminal Court. In other words, there's nobody who's above the law. But number two, the question of selectivity, whether it is actual or apparent, is one that can make a very big wound or cause a very big blow to the perception of fairness and administration of justice. If there are three people who have evidence against them and I pick one and I don't pick the other two, yes, I may have a case against one person, but the fact that I have ignored or not gone against the other two creates a very strong perception that can cause extreme harm to the process of administration of justice. So Kenyans want to see a level playing field, if I may say so, in regard to criminal prosecutions. That if the second in hierarchy in the judiciary can be taken to court, is it possible to take the second in hierarchy in the executive or in the legislature or in any other body?
Although we have already seen prosecutions in the executive, we have seen prosecutions in the legislature.
Yes, and also we've seen governors being taken to court. So it's
and they've been singled out. It's been individuals. So why can't this be an individual problem?
Yes, we are not saying it cannot be. It may be, and that's what I'm saying. Let's not jump to conclusions. But Kenyans are entitled to study the entire environment, and it doesn't end today. Even next week, they'll still be looking at the situation to determine whether the fairness is there in the way the decisions to prosecute and the manner of prosecution is being handled.
Okay, I'll tell her.
Hussein, the only reason why we can even debate soberly here and the country seems to be sober is because of this thing that has been visited upon us called the BBI, the Building Bridges Initiative, or the handshake. That is the only reason why, for some time, this Philomena Mwilu issue will appear to be being handled professionally, legally, and so for the public waits.
As a lawyer, you don't, saying that, as a lawyer, you don't care to first see what they present in the case.
I am here as a lawyer, but I am also here as a political analyst. So you want me to talk about law? I'll talk about law. If you want me to talk about political analysis,
yes,
I'll talk about political analysis.
You're talking about the politics, but I'm asking you first as a lawyer.
So what's your question again?
My question is, you can say that without waiting to hear what the DPP will present in court.
No. As a lawyer, I have said that these are allegations, and we cannot rule or say either way, because until the DPP goes through the entire motion of his evidence production, there are about 35 witnesses, you cannot say that the investigations or the allegations don't have merit. At the same time, you cannot say that Honorable Philomena Mwilu is guilty and therefore she should not continue performing her duties. You understand?
Okay. So after that, should we care then what politics says? Or that is it?
Kenya is a very political country. Even as you speak to me, I can see that beyond what you're asking, there is more. So as a political country, there is much more. And I can only wait maybe for another day will you invite me here for political analysis. But for today, it appears our emphasis is on the legality, and I'll stick to that.
All right.
Yes.
Of course, we wait to see how this case proceeds, but of course, it's very interesting and interesting days ahead. Thank you so much, Alutala Lubwana and Charles Kanjama. Thank you for trying to interpret all this for us. You're watching Newsnight. Keep texting us #242 on Twitter. Use the hashtag